If you've come for me to be upset or angry or frustrated that the New York Knicks are NBA champions, you've come to the wrong place because I'm not. In fact, I'm the opposite. I'm excited. And that's because I know the direction that the Boston Celtics need to head in order to compete as soon as next season. And it starts by trading Jaylen Brown. Welcome in, everybody, to the Your Celtics Source podcast. We're recording this just hours after Jalen Brunson, OG Anunoby, Karl Anthony Towns, you name it, complete the historic championship run, breaking a 53-year drought in New York City, and give all the credit in the world to what those guys were able to accomplish. The San Antonio Spurs, on the other side, they have a lot of growing up to do, and I know they're going to be able to do it. Victor Wembanyama's only going to get better. Dylan Harper's already a stud. He's my favorite player to watch in the NBA right now. He's just that spectacular. But there's a lot of things that they need to improve on, including the coach in Mitch Johnson, who is a rookie head coach this year. He's got some growing up to do as well. I expect them all to do that. I expect the San Antonio Spurs to be right back in the mix next season, maybe even the favorite. That being said, it's really hard to get back to the NBA Finals. Who knows if everybody can stay healthy? You need to get luck along the way. The San Antonio Spurs are going to still have to go up against the Denver Nuggets, the Oklahoma City Thunder, the Minnesota Timberwolves. The Lakers might be in the mix as well. There's still lots of great teams. It's going to be hard to get back, but I trust that Wemby and the crew are going to be able to get it done, at least when Wemby's around. That being said, this episode, it's not about the finals. It's not about the Knicks or the Spurs. The offseason has officially begun, and it's time to look at how the Celtics can get back into the championship mix, how they can compete for championships, how they can get back to the finals consecutive years in this year that's filled with parity. And let me be honest, it's not about trading for some big superstar like Giannis. There's tons of stuff out there right now. It seems like the Celtics are one of the favorites to trade for Giannis, along with the Miami Heat, and I really hope they don't do that. That would be a huge mistake. My fingers are crossed right now that Brad Stevens is just using the Miami Heat as a way to drive up the prices. He's just putting his name out there and taking calls as a way to just make it harder for teams and, make teams give up more assets to get Giannis. I'm hoping in the end that the Celtics don't actually trade for Giannis, because I think that completely shuts that championship window to just 4 or 5 years until Giannis, retires or whatever. He already has the injury concerns that follow him. All of that stuff, right? And you add to the fact that he is a max contract salary guy making $70 million a year, adding that to Jayson Tatum, and that's $140 million in your contracts in just two players right there. I don't want that. That completely locks the Celtics in to these next 4 years, and whatever happens, happens, and you can't build much around the team when you do that. But you do have to do something. And like I hinted at the top of the show, it is for trading Jaylen Brown. But it's not trading Jaylen Brown for Giannis. And before I even dive into what you could trade Jaylen Brown for, maybe this will answer it a little bit. But you see what the Knicks did. The Knicks have a ton of role players, and maybe they're a little bit ahead of role players. Maybe they're above that a tiny bit in OG Anunoby and Karl Anthony Towns. But in the end, when it comes down to winning time, you have one guy. One guy is doing the work. One guy is the scorer that can get anywhere he wants on the floor, that can make a shot against anybody, that's unstoppable in the fourth quarter. And you have a bunch of fantastic shooters that can feed off of Jalen Brunson's presence. You have another guy in Karl Anthony Towns that can do the work when Jalen Brunson rather gets into tough situations. But when it comes down to winning time, it's all Jalen Brunson. And yes, you don't want a selfish, heliocentric type of basketball, and it can become that way sometimes when you have one guy and a lot of just, role players around him. But it makes it a lot easier to know the plays you're going to run and to execute them. The Celtics are constantly trying to feed Derek White the ball, Peyton Pritchard the ball, Jaylen Brown the ball, Jayson Tatum the ball. Who's it going to in the fourth quarter? Who can get the job done? If you have one guy, you know it's going to Jayson Tatum. And Jayson Tatum, and listen, right, you might right away say, well, then teams just sort of focus all their efforts and their attention to guarding Jayson Tatum. But you're fine with that. I actually think Jayson Tatum would do a much better job against double teams than he is getting the single coverage when Jaylen Brown's on the court with him. Jayson Tatum, this year struggled, obviously. He's coming off of the Achilles injury and whatever, so you have to keep that in mind. But he definitely did struggle when he was going up against a defender, especially a talented defender, a single coverage defender, in fact. So, it makes it really hard for him to create advantages like that. And why were teams only single covering him? Because you have Jaylen Brown, you have Derek White, you have Peyton Pritchard alongside of them. But what happens when you take Jaylen Brown off the floor? Teams start to double. And what does that do? That frees up a guy. You'd rather have a double on Jayson Tatum, but free up an open guy to then create a shot, to make a corner three. And that's what the Knicks are doing. They're forcing the Spurs, or should I say they forced the Spurs, because the series is over now, to double Jalen Brunson, because Jalen Brunson was just that spectacular. And what did Jalen Brunson do? Besides that game 3 where they went sort of heliocentric iso ball, Jalen Brunson used his advantage. He used the attention that he was drawing to kick it out to a guy that could make a three. To OG Anunoby, who was lights out, who could not miss from the corner. To Landry Shamet, who couldn't miss from the corner. Josh Hart was making a couple threes. Mikal Bridges could hit a couple threes. Lots of guys on the Knicks were hot in this series, obviously. Right? And you need shooting, and Derek White's going to have a bounce-back year for sure. But I think Jayson Tatum is the guy that the Celtics need to move forward with. And maybe he's not the point guard, right? Because I don't think he's the best at being the point guard for this team. Maybe he's a guy that, you still have a point guard, right? Derek White can still be the point guard, but he can be the guy that can finish the plays and get the job done in the fourth quarter. And I think that's the way the Celtics have to go. They have to make it one guy that's the guy that other teams pay attention to. Because once those doubles come, I know Jayson Tatum is good enough, quick enough, has the ability to find the open guy for easy buckets. And the Celtics are going to tear teams apart if they can do it like that. But having two guys on the floor actually makes it harder for the Celtics because they have to still go up against a defender. And yes, one defender is better than a double coverage, but you always take an open guy rather than a single coverage. And there's no open guys when everyone's playing straight up. There's no advantage created. There's no guy that's left open when you're just guarding Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown straight up with one guy. You have to create a advantage where a team has no choice but to come double you, to come try and trap you. And Jayson Tatum is going to be the guy that can average a triple-double a game doing it. He can still get his 25 to 30 points a night. In fact, he'd probably have 30 points a night if it was just him as the alpha on the team. He's going to get the rebounds. He's one of the best rebounders in the NBA. He's already averaging close to a double-double. An average, I do believe, a double-double when he came back. Maybe just short of a double-double. But those assists, those are going to skyrocket when he's by himself and allowing his teammates just to feed off of the shadows that he's creating. That being said, you got to get something back for Jaylen Brown. You're not just trading him for money or for draft picks. what can you get back? And you're not going to get a top pick in this draft coming up where you can get a number 2 pick or something like the San Antonio Spurs did and got Dylan Harper, Stephon Castle, right? You're not going to get those guys. In fact, these new salary apron rules and whatever, and the new lottery reform as well, are sort of due to what the San Antonio Spurs have done over the last couple of years, getting 3 consecutive top 5 picks. That's not going to happen anymore. You're not going to be able to do that. In fact, with the new rules and everything, I'm not so sure how teams are going to want to trade draft picks so far into the future or what those trades are going to be, because you can be, in the play-in and still get a better odds of getting the number 1 overall pick than maybe the worst team in terms of record, right? Because now that those 3 worst teams have a lower chance of getting that number 1 overall pick compared to the next 4 through 10, that makes a huge difference. Are teams going to want to trade draft picks, way into the future when you have no idea what's going to happen, where you're going to be, and when you still have a chance at that pick to get a number 1 overall pick? Why not take the risk? So I don't know if draft picks are going to be an option. But what can you get back that is not going to be the maybe level of a Jaylen Brown that can still be a role player around Jayson Tatum? In my opinion, I think you need to get a combination of guys for Jaylen Brown. You need to get a number 2 option, and that could be like a DeJounte Murray from the New Orleans Pelicans or Trey Murphy either. Right, those could be viable options. There's a couple other guys around the league that are not coming to my mind right now, but I think could be great options as well. And then you need to get more young talent that you can develop. And I do believe that Ugo Gonzalez and Baylor Shireman can continue to develop into something that can provide some sort of asset to you. I don't know how good that's going to be. I'm out on Jordan Walsh at this point because I just don't think that shooting's ever going to come around, whereas I know Baylor Shireman can shoot, and Ugo Gonzalez is just a ridiculous athlete and is 6'8" or whatever, so he's going to just be a great wing player that can provide defense and offense on both ends of the floor. But you need some more depth. You need a guard that you can develop like a Dylan Harper, and it's going to be hard to find those guys. I don't know if there are anyone in the NBA right now. Can you buy low on some of those players, right, and see if you can get more back when you trade Jaylen Brown? I'm out on Giannis. He's not an option. He just shortens that window. The window that you have to go into is getting younger, getting more athletic, finding ways to put guys around Jayson Tatum, but allow Jayson Tatum to be the one guy. And everybody's saying, don't trade Jaylen Brown, right? Everybody's all over the comments, especially because the Celtics have really only been posting content of Jaylen Brown over the last week or so. Kind of a weird, unsettling move by them, given that everybody's talking about him being traded, and you're posting stuff as if he's going to be traded. It's kind of a weird vibe right now around the team, especially because Jaylen Brown, the Celtics say that they have no interest in trading Jaylen Brown, but we know they're taking calls for the first time in many seasons that they've actually legitimately listened to calls on Jaylen Brown, right? The last couple of years, obviously there's always trades for Jaylen Brown, or calls should I say, right? But the Celtics really haven't been interested in taking them. But for the first time this year, they have opened up the phone lines for all sorts of players, all sorts of teams calling in that would never call in about Jaylen Brown. That's really interesting. And I have my trust in Brad Stevens. I hope they don't trade for Giannis. And, I have full faith that Brad Stevens is going to do the right move. But you got to find a way to get younger. You just do. You look at this Spurs team, how young and athletic they are. You look at the Thunder team, how young and athletic they are. You look at the Knicks team, right? And maybe they're not as young and athletic as the Spurs and the Thunder are, but they have elite shooting, elite playmaking, and most importantly, they have one guy and everybody knows their role. You don't have Jaylen Brown and Jayson Tatum, maybe not on purpose, but just human nature to be competing against one another when they're on the floor, right? You just can't have that because it just will not work when you're trying to, run a possession and instead of having a double team come, it's just one guy and you're trying to ISO against this guy on the perimeter, right? It's not going to work. You have to create a double team because defenders in this league are too good that Jayson Tatum can try and blow by them every single time, right? Sometimes it will work, and Jayson Tatum is going to get better, right? Having a full year since his Achilles injury, he's going to get better, and I expect him to make a full recovery and whatever. He looked pretty good as that playoffs went on, and obviously he suffered that, I guess, setback. I don't even know if it's a setback in Game 7, whatever you call it, just like soreness that apparently is pretty common when dealing with those injuries. And I expect that to be all sorted out by the start of the season in November or October, should I say. But let Jayson Tatum be the guy. Make it impossible for teams not to double him, and then when they do double, you kick it out to open guys. Derek White's going to have a bounce back season because he just has to, right? He's been so good for the last many years. Last year was just a unique, really odd year for him. So I'm fully expecting that bounce back. Another thing that we briefly talked about is the fact that Jaylen Brown is eligible for a contract extension of upwards of $70 million a year. We already talked about how you cannot have two supermax contract guys in today's salary aprons. Giannis is a guy like that, but Jaylen Brown would be eligible for even more that Giannis is making. If anything, you'd want Giannis over Jaylen Brown, given that Giannis, even with his injury history, is a better player than Jaylen Brown. Maybe not by a lot, but he just is. That being said, I'm out on both of those. I need Jaylen Brown, and I love Jaylen Brown. I wish he could stay, but Jayson Tatum is the better player. He just is. You got to keep one and not the other, and I don't know who you would trade Jaylen Brown for. Maybe it's the Pelicans guys, like I've mentioned. I don't really know. There's not a lot of guys that come to my mind right now that would be perfect, fits on this Celtics roster. That's up for Brad Stevens to figure out, and I have full trust in him to figure it out. Full faith that he's going to make this team better over the offseason. Other things the Celtics can do, not related to the Jaylen Brown situation, is bringing back a couple of players or maybe making some trades and stuff that the Celtics have had in the past that I think could be great fits along the outside of this team. Guys that maybe you could bring in for minimum salaries, vet minimums. The first guy that comes to mind is Robert Williams. Obviously, Robert Williams had tons of injuries, and that's a sort of the, I guess, reason why the Celtics end up trading him. But he's a crowd favorite, one of my favorite guys. He's developed a three, not that I think that's going to play a huge part in the Celtics, and maybe the Celtics can keep him healthy for a little bit more than they were when he was just a kid, and he was better in Portland this season. He, was a factor in the playoffs for sure. Definitely played a backup role, but the Celtics badly needed a center these playoffs. Joel Embiid fully dominated Neemias Queta. Neemias Queta is going to continue to get better. He just has to, but you need a starting caliber center. And I don't know if that's Robert Williams. I don't know who it is. In fact, there's not a lot of centers that you can bring in right now that would get the Celtics over the top. There really isn't, and that's the unfortunate part because that was really, in my opinion, the main thing that let the Celtics down in the playoffs. But you got to bring in something. You got to bring in someone that's going to be, even if Queta's the starter, someone that's better than a Luka Garza and obviously what Nikola Vucevic provided for the few games that he was around. You got to get something for that. Robert Williams, in my opinion, feels like a perfect guy to bring in. There are some other guys. You don't want to go old because you're trying to get young and athletic. You're probably going to draft a center in this upcoming draft anyway because you just have to at this point. We'll see what Amari Williams can provide. He's still raw and weak, and obviously, he's not going to be better than Queta at this point, and you need someone at least comparable to Queta, if not better. That's something to keep an eye. Someone else you might be able to bring back, maybe an Anthony Simons, although Anthony Simons could play a big role on the Bulls this upcoming season, so we'll see whether he wants to do that. He would have to take a pretty minimum salary, but he could be a great guard alongside either coming off the bench or starting. I I think that was the mistake that the Celtics made this season, right? And they don't make a lot of mistakes, but I definitely do think that obviously they badly needed a center and they wanted to get off the contract and whatever, so they trade Anthony Simons. But in the end, with the way Derek White couldn't make a shot and he was ice cold shooting, and the way Anthony Simons actually got better on defense, right? He was playable. He was nowhere near what Derek White did on the defensive end, right? But if you could play just stints of Anthony Simons in the playoffs, you might. I'm not going to say you were going to beat the Knicks because the Knicks could not lose in these playoffs, but you at least would have beaten the 76ers and put up a fight against the Knicks, right? You had that opportunity, and I think the Celtics blew it when they tried to put their chips in for a center that obviously didn't work out and was maybe in the long run not the right move to do. That being said, that was for last season. It's a new season now that the NBA Finals is over. Anthony Simons could be an option that they bring back. We'll see if he wants to do that, if he's okay buying into a smaller role and whatever, especially because this is going to be a team now that is, hopefully, if everything goes according to plan and the owners, are willing to spend and whatever, that this is not a team that's sort of trying to cut salary and play around the margins. It's a team that with Jayson Tatum and everyone else that's on this team in their prime or getting into their prime, and a team that needs to get younger and more athletic, it's time to win. So hopefully they're not going down that route, and Anthony Simons would be a great option to bring back. That being said, other guys, there was thoughts of a Zion Williamson trade. I mean, similar to Giannis. I mean, he doesn't make as much as Giannis does, but he's an injured guy that doesn't shoot threes whatsoever, that could be a great fit alongside Jayson Tatum, obviously, if you can keep him healthy, right? I would love that duo, but I'm worried about his health just as much as I'm worried about the health of Giannis. So maybe that's an option. I don't know, and we'll never know. Brad Stevens is one of the trickiest GMs, most sneakiest GMs the NBA has ever seen. Well, nothing ever leaks out of the Celtics organization, so it'll be some surprise, and we'll react live whenever that happens. Over the summer, we'll react later that today because my guess it's going to be midday sometime, and I'll probably be working. I won't be able to go live at that exact time, but we'll try and do stuff throughout the summer. We're going to do NBA draft reactions and all of that. I'm not sure yet whether I'm going to do a live show during the NBA draft and we'll react to each player that gets drafted, at least for day one, right? The problem is the Celtics aren't drafting till like 27th or something like that. I don't remember the exact draft pick, but that's a 2.5 hour show that I don't really want to sit through. And it would be interesting, right? Because there's a lot of great guys, and we'll see the order and how that shapes out. I have no idea who's going to go first. I think it's going to be AJ Demancia, but I'm not sure, right? And after that, it could be a number of guys. So that'll be an interesting show. So I'm leaning towards going live. I got to check my schedule and everything. That's coming up in about a week and a half. So we'll do that. We'll have a reaction to whoever the Celtics pick anyway. We'll do reactions if there's any big trade, either around the NBA or with the Celtics in particular, because we try and stay up to date on Celtics and NBA coverage on this show, and there might be a Kyrie Irving trade. We already saw some trades during this this regular season. There might be some more of that as the tankers try and sort of jumpstart that road back to contention, just like the Utah Jazz did, the Washington Wizards did. Those will be interesting teams to watch this coming season. But that being said, I'm going to wrap it up there. We'll keep this pod nice and short. You can check out this podcast on Spotify, Apple, Amazon, wherever you listen to your podcast. Please give a like and a rating. A 5-star review would be much appreciated on those channels as I try and build this up. We're just a couple of years into this, and I've really appreciated your support. Our third season officially under the books. Our second true season, as we only did half of that first season, that Celtics championship run. But thanks again for your support. Please like and subscribe. Follow on social media. If you didn't get a chance to check out my instant reaction, we went live after Game 5 of the NBA Finals last night. So check that out. And until next time, go Celtics.
Action.